So when you look over the English countryside or even over farmlands in the United States, oftentimes you will see that various patches of cultivated land are separated by these really dense lines of foliage, which we call hedges or hedgerows, right? And while hedgerows are definitely more popular in the UK and in rural England and the like, uh, they really show up in one form or another pretty much everywhere as a way to separate different types of crops, as a way to delineate, where one person's plot of land ends and somebody else's begins. Sometimes even used as city markers or town or village markers to sort of line out, like, this is where, this village ends and this one starts. So they're really lines of territory, lines of boundary. And inside of these dense hedges, you will find, a proliferation of different kinds of plants, creepers, vines, shrubs, trees. A lot of times we find some of our spikier plant allies, those with thorns and brambles, because the hedges act as these incredible spaces of refuge and hostel for all kinds of animals and birds and insects. And, when a field or an area of land is cultivated, it's being plowed or farmed or whatever, oftentimes, it's very exposed. There's not a lot of places for animals and birds to nest or hide from predators. But these hedgerows are these, thick and dense areas where they can do all of that, where they can live their lives. So they're kind of little oases of wildness amidst cultivation. And I think that's another interesting thing to keep in mind as we continue this conversation, that we find hedgerows next to cultivated land, right? So we have these spaces where humans have come in through ingenuity and plowed and made perfectly straight lines and put in watering mechanisms and all of that. And then all of a sudden there's this space of just pure wildness, right? It's dark and brambly in there, and we know that it's rife with wildlife. And so, on the physical level, these hedgerows are boundaries. They are spaces that demarcate, area. They are a kind of a stark contrast between the cultivated and the wild. And in deeper plant spirit work, the hedgerows do the same thing on a symbolic level. So that's what I really want to talk about today. Welcome to another one of our free Friday community classes right here on the YouTube. I post these every single Friday, and we talk about all kinds of different stuff related to folkloric work with plants. And this week we're talking about the symbolism of the hedgerow, especially as it relates to folks who do work that we might call hedge crossing or hedge jumping or hedge riding, right? These are all terms that we see in the folklore, not necessarily specific to people working with plants, but definitely, all the squishy overlap that we see in all those spaces. So hedgerows then, on the spiritual level, are symbolic of the line or the boundary that separates our world, the world of cultivation, the cultivated field, from the other world, the world of the unknown, of wildness, of twists and turns, of darkness in the daytime, right? In the same way that the deep forest can sometimes be symbolic of the other world, as we move into these deep forest spaces, they become otherworld-like, and so they are not only liminal in that sense, but they're also symbolic of otherness. The hedgerow is very much the same way, right? And so in our work, the hedge kind of symbolizes or represents, and sometimes even structurally functions as that membrane, that imaginal boundary that separates our world from the world of otherness. And specifically in this conversation, our world from the world of the plants, or the world of Faerie, if you like, because there's a lot of overlap there, right? And so in order to access fully the world of the plants, which is the other world, which is a non-ordinary world that runs parallel to ours, right? They're not different places. It's happening right here. It's just a different perspective. The plants are looking at reality in one way, and we're looking at reality in a different way. To the extent that in a lot of our fairy lore, we find that while humans can be fully unaware of spiritual beings and spiritual events happening right where they are because our perspectives are different, similarly, sometimes the spirits are unaware that we're even here, right? So they run parallel. They're mixed up. They're not two different spaces. One's not up there or down there, literally. They're all happening in the same place, but the perspective, the way that the inhabitants of those realms engage is just different. So the hedge then represents that line that separates those two worlds. And in order to do one of the big goals of deeper plant spirit work, which is the cultivation of dual citizenship, I'm going to do a class on this here in a few weeks here in August 2024. We have to be able to jump that hedge, right? We have to be able to move over or through that boundary. So the hedge represents the line that we cross to get into the other world, to step as ourselves in our spiritual form via the practice of spirit light into the other world, where we go and commune with the spirits of land, with the old gods, with the plant spirits on their turf as they are, right? We learn from them, we work with them, and then we come back over the hedge into the cultivated land of the human, and we bring that wisdom and that teaching back in service of our communities, right? That's what Wortcunning practice is. That is what plant spirit work practice is. That is what hedge jumping, hedge crossing, hedge riding is. That is what spiritual herbalism is, right? It's humans moving through the boundary that separates the world, working with plants, learning from them, and then bringing that wisdom and medicine back in service of our communities. So that's one aspect of it, that the hedgerow is that symbolic line of demarcation between our world and the world of otherness. The other really cool thing, and this is really going to flip switches for folks who do any kind of journey work, spirit flight work, or hedge crossing work, is the hedge can also act, and in my practice very much does act, as the place where we are able to cross over into the other world. So the hedge is simultaneously the wall that separates the worlds and the drawbridge that drops down to allow us to cross through. And we do that because many of the plants who grow in hedges have these symbolic connections, these folkloric connections with spirit flight, with being able to cross through to otherness, or being able to enter into the secrets, the mysteries. We do see this with a lot of our Rosaceae family plants, right? Which we get the term sub rosa, right? In secret, in mystery. In the middle of the day, the hedgerow will be dark inside, right? Symbolizing the mystery, the unknown, the underneath, that which exists underneath our world. Not literally, but in the same way that your metabolism is underneath the warmth of your body, or that the subconscious mind is underneath the conscious mind, right? It's what exists below. So we can use the symbol of the hedge in our imaginal visionary practices to move in spirit from this world into the other world. And we do that by first and foremost, cultivating allyships with the plants of the hedgerows, and second, through visual visionary experiences of crossing through, moving through that thicket, moving through natural arches and holes in stones and knots in trees and all of that, to squeeze our spirits from our bodies, right? And of course we rely on that thread that tethers the spirit to the body, but it allows us to move in spirit to kind of give us a way out into spirit, into the other world. So I talk a lot about hedge crossing work, hedgerow work, and this is a very important part of plant spirit work. So as you are contemplating the way that the world of the human and the world of the plants, or our world and the other world, however you want to say that, are related, and how they're separated, and how sometimes that line is really squishy and it's not a clean line. The closer you get to the hedgerow, you realize the edges are very organic and winding. This is a very nice way for us to explore this concept of dual citizenship, this concept of moving, whether it's just in contemplation or in flights of spirit, or sometimes even physically, right? From one space into another, with the symbolism of the hedgerow. So, if this is part of your practice, if you've worked with hedgerows at all, if you live in a place where there are hedgerows and you are fortunate enough to be able to go do spiritual work there, because I will tell you that when you walk through a cultivated space, again, those nice clean lines of a field or a farm or gardens, or just low meadowy grass where we have that human perspective, we can see everything 360. When you approach those edges of wildness, whether it's a hedgerow or sometimes the edge of a forest, a large wild space, you really feel yourself stepping up to the precipice of otherness. You really can come right up to the edge of that and just sit down and sit in our world and gaze into the other world. And in these spaces on the physical level, really magical things can happen. This is where we often have the most profound experiences of otherness, probably second only to our kurgans, our burial mounds, our sacred ancestral burial spaces. So very cool to contemplate. So share any stories about hedgerows or your own workings with spirit flight below. I'd love to hear about it. This is the first part in a whole bunch of classes I'm going to do on crossing the hedge and working with the hedge. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. You'll get a little ding every time a new class comes out. I look forward to seeing you next time.